Welcome to another episode of the Afikra podcast. My name is Mikey Mhenna. Today on the series, I'm pleased to have Daisy Jadron on the series, who is an award-winning filmmaker, journalist, and entrepreneur. She's worked as a journalist with countless organizations all over the world and is the director behind the film Enough, Lebanon's Darkest Hour. Daisy, welcome to Afikra.
How are you, Mikey? Thank you very much for having me on your show.
I'm doing well. Not many people start off by saying, "How are you?" It's very sweet of you.
Oh, well, I think we should. I think, it's it's not a compliment. It's a necessity really to be as thoughtful to you and the people you talk to.
Yeah,
so how are you, Mike?
I'm doing really well. Much better now, I have to say. So let me start by sort of addressing the first thing that I think a lot of people think in Lebanon and sort of in the Arab world when they first meet you, which is you have this like last name that's very Lebanese and Arab, Jadron. But your accent in English suggests that you didn't grow up in the region. And you grew up in Australia. So I would just want to ask you, do you feel like that gives you some sort of like superpower? And that perspective sort of enables you to ask interesting questions and sort of interrogate what's going on here in a way that somebody who is born and raised in Lebanon, or at least born and raised in the Arab world, might not be able to?
What a great question. My only superpower comes from what God blessed me with. And from a very young age, I was blessed with reading and loving stories and being able to write. What I think the advantage I have, having grown up outside Lebanon, I was 5 when we left Lebanon, is that they talk about bird's eye view. I can do that more easily than those in the middle of the mess, and you see the wood for the trees. And I think that is, if you want to call it a superpower, it's not, it's just a training. It's a way of being able to pull yourself out, to be able to see what's really going on more clearly, because when anyone, and, it happens to me all the time when I'm in the midst of something, I can't see the wood for the trees and I can't think clearly to make the right decisions and strategically, where do I want to go? And so that really helped me looking at Lebanon from abroad, trying to get my head around it. I couldn't quite get my head around it until I started coming back again. I mean, I come back all the time, but I'd come for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or something, and it wasn't really interrogating what was going on. It was enjoying the incredible beauty of Lebanon, the people, the food, life, and that. So that's the advantage I have as a diaspora, ex-diaspora now, because I live in Lebanon. But I still have that. I hold very firmly to that perspective. Otherwise, I'll get caught up in the melee that's going on in Lebanon, and I won't be able to serve Lebanon if I get stuck in it. And that's a training too as a journalist. You have to be able to really find the story. What is the story?
So I was reading your bio and it said something that caught my eye. It said, after several years in sport, Daisy moved to the international desk to cover foreign affairs. And it struck me, what about the reporting process in the world of athletics do you feel like actually like lends itself to the sport of politics?
Well, no. I think journalism is journalism.
Yeah.
If you're a good journalist, there are rules and processes and you find the story. But I loved sport as a child, and
me too.
So easy I found it comfortable when I was doing my cadetship. You do your training, you get to move into different departments, entertainment, sport, finance, news, crime, all of those areas. And I really loved it at sport, and I very attracted to the sportsmen, you know. So
Much more attractive than Lebanese politicians, as it turns out.
definitely. So yeah, I requested that I finish and be positioned on the sports desk at the Australian newspaper, and I had sort of done, you know, 3 or 6 months on the desk, and I got on really well with the sports editor, and just found it really comfortable, and I loved it. I love sport. I think their sport is a wonderful leveler for everyone. Doesn't matter. It's like, you know, this is what brings us together. Doesn't matter what status you are, background. You love your team. You love the sport. And being assigned after about 6 months or 8 months on the sports desk, my own round, which is really unique, a sports round to own soccer. So I was assigned to be the first soccer writer on in Australia, first female soccer writer in Australia, and first female sports writer on the Australian. So it was awesome, and I loved it. I wasn't as well versed on soccer, football, as I was on cricket and rugby league and, you know, other sports, but it's sport, and I knew, and I understood the game, and I understood the rules, and yeah, it was exciting. But yeah, moving to the international desk was a huge flip.
Yeah.
But I did that after traveling to Lebanon for the first time as an adult when I was 23. My mother forced me to come here. I was traveling around Europe, and I just finished the Olympic Games in 1988, and I was very excited. And I was in Europe, and Mum said, "Come and see your relatives in Lebanon. You know, go and see them." And I said, "But there's a war, Mum. You know, I could die. You know." She said, "It's fine. You know, go to the village. It'll be fine." And I reluctantly did it. I was coming for 2 weeks and ended up staying for 6, and completely changed my world completely.
Did you grow up in a primarily Lebanese community in Australia? Where in Australia, by the way? Let's get that right first.
In Sydney.
Yeah.
And no, we didn't grow up in a primarily Lebanese area at all. We had little to do with the Lebanese community. We were a very Lebanese family. Everything was culturally Lebanese, and my mum and dad talked Lebanese at home. But we didn't talk it. So I developed an ear for it, but I very bad, you know, tongue. So I sound very foreign when I talk, and people laugh at me, but it's okay. I enjoy it. But yes, we grew up. It was just, I don't know, the dad found an opportunity to buy a shop in an area that had mostly, you know, Anglo-Saxon or Greeks or Italians, not so many Lebanese. So we grew up with a mix of cultures, and but I later got involved. After that trip to Lebanon, I got involved with the Lebanese and in Australia, and started to dive into my whole roots and everything.
Yeah. I mean, when did you start to actually think, you know what, this 6 weeks is going to actually be, I'm going to stretch this 6 weeks into like a whole career, and into a life's work?
Immediately, as soon as I got back to Australia after that 6 weeks, I wrote a 2-page spread for the Weekend Australian. So it's a broadsheet, so it was a long story. And I talked to my sports editor and my editor-in-chief, and I said, you know, this is what's happened. This is calling. This is not I need to move to the foreign desk. I want to understand what's going on in the Middle East. I want to understand why Lebanon, you know, is, you know, going through this war, and I feel very pulled to this. And they were great. They, you know, within a few weeks, I moved on to the international desk and was working with the foreign editor, and, you know, learning about the whole world, not just Lebanon. But I got to, you know, we have to sift through stories every single day. So you can, you know, search. Let me turn that off for you. Sorry about that. You have to search and read everything that's going on around the world, and it's and then, you know, understanding. I got more in depth in the whole issue.
Yeah. You feel at your core, like if you think about your work, it's interesting that conversation you're having in 1988 with your editor saying, I need to understand, right? Like I need, not you, editor, needs to understand, not even the reader needs to understand. I precisely need to understand why. Where does that need come from? And do you finally understand? Because if you do, please explain it to me.
Actually, everyone says Lebanon is very complex, and it's it's a, I would say some profanity here, but it's it's a head, whatever.
Yeah, feel free.
It's a mind fuck.
Yeah, there you go.
It is when you don't take the time to do the research and dive into the background and really delve into how everything, it doesn't just happen by chance. There's nothing that happens by chance. It's a series of decisions and actions and events. And each time someone's making another decision, and Lebanon was another bad decision, not only internally, but regionally and globally. There was a lot of foreign interference, and we can't blame them. And I had this conversation with the editor, Middle East editor at The Economist, when I was doing the research on the film. Why is so much interest in Lebanon? Why is everyone's got their fingers in Lebanon's pie, and why are they disrupting Lebanon? And he really helped me again understand this very simply. He said, look, and it was a time, with Lebanon, we knew there was oil and gas off the coast, and now trying to steal the gas and oil. And he said, look, look at other countries in the Middle East, in the region and around the world. They're smaller than Lebanon. Look at Qatar, look at Bahrain, look at, UAE, look at those countries. They have oil. They have much more oil than Lebanon. And yes, there's, some involvement with foreign countries. But the difference with them and Lebanon is that they have a very strong government. They have a strong, adherence to their patriotism and sovereignty. Lebanon's leaders from independence were always externalizing their contacts, and they have continued to do that, and the different sectarian groups are making alliances with external, regional partners and global partners. So they're inviting foreign interference. Now, if Lebanon had a strong government and there was, clarity and purpose, those countries would still work with Lebanon, but on a different basis. And, he explained that even more. And I was like, it really shifted. And this is, talking about learning about Lebanon, it's an ongoing process, but this is where continuing to be curious, continuing to know there's a solution to a problem. And going back to what I said about being a complex country and with complex issues, when you break it down, it really isn't that complex. It's just that we like to, the narrative that people deliver, make it complex, and the things they say, the propaganda. But it really is very simple and no different to any other country. The people of this country, the real, everyone, every sect, want to have the same kind of opportunities and stability and security and enjoy life. And however, and I've had this argument just recently, they haven't really been active in protecting this beautiful country, this incredible culture that is unique in the world. And I think we took it for granted for a long time. And, we're paying the price of the decisions, the good decisions we didn't make in the past, and the right decisions we didn't make, and the stepping up and taking ownership, and, you know, allowing others to, you know, it's in the culture, you know, we love each other very much. There's this real bond, and kindness and acceptance and malashi, marra'a, or habibi, and, you know, and there's a loyalty factor. And again, it's part of our incredible mosaic of our culture and our fabric of our identity. But at the end of the day, you know, accountability always should be part of decision making. And even with children, the way we bring up children, it's not just here. And, you know, I've got, you know, friends in Australia and around the world who don't parent their children. They want to be friends and they want to be accepted and they want to be liked. They want to be loved, and, you know, but you have a responsibility also to guide that child effectively. And, you know, that's part of the clarity that comes to me, and it's an ongoing thing. It's not simple because I run a company, I've got staff, I've had up to 27 staff, and it's horrible trying to manage people, you know, and but you've got to have those rules and boundaries and KPIs and job descriptions and come back to them and do the process. The management process is critical, and having the right people in those positions is absolutely vital to the success of any country, any company, any family. It's all the same, you know, starts at home.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask you a question. During, after August 4th, which I was here for, there was this rally cry for months afterwards. Don't stop talking about Lebanon.
Yes.
On social media, don't stop talking about Lebanon. And it's a refrain that gets reused, you know, don't stop talking about Ukraine, don't stop talking about, like, fill in the blank. And my own cynicism kicks in and I say, you know what, actually, why should somebody in Milwaukee or somebody in like Cartagena or somebody in Sydney or somebody in Japan or somebody in Berlin not stop talking about Lebanon? They have their own problems. You know, we are a small little place on the map. Maybe they should stop talking about Lebanon. So let me ask you the question.
Yeah.
Why should this matter to anybody?
It's a great question and a great perspective also, because I was just talking to a journalist from London. He's based here, and I'm talking to media around the world to try and get them on the story. And, you know, to your point, they're just not interested in Lebanon. They're over it, like the Middle East leaders are over it. It's a tiresome story. At that time, though, like we were talking about August 4, it was an important cry, and it was such a huge injustice, and the fear that it would just go the way of every other crisis and situation that had, you know, befallen Lebanon. But, you know, I was thinking about it today, having, you know, trying to talk to this, you know, to the point of we need more mainstream global media talking about Lebanon, which would then make more global audience and diaspora talk about Lebanon and not forget Lebanon. And it really confronted me this morning having that conversation with him. It's happened with a few people now, like, you know, they're just not interested in Lebanon. Everyone's not interested in Lebanon. They're not interested in Lebanon. And to your point, maybe they should, they've stopped talking about Lebanon because we are not taking care of our own country. We are not doing what is necessary. We are not understanding our role in our destiny. They're repeating the same stories, like they were talking, you know, like we can't repeat, the sit-in now and the whatever. It's like, okay, we reported it, but we can't every week. You know, it's escalated to another level. I'm trying to pitch that story to them to get them to report, but it's tiresome. It really, I get it. I really sadly get it. And that's why I'm doing the reporting I'm doing, but I won't get tired with it. I know there's an audience that are interested. They're not the mass audience, but there is an audience, and it's got to be different angles. But you know, I'm not. I'm with you there. It's a dilemma. It really is a conundrum. You're like, we need to take it back. And this is what I'm doing here. I'm trying to take it back, and I'm trying to be strategic. And my God, on these WhatsApp groups, there are so many groups, and the amount of chatter and distraction, and they're not stopping talking about Lebanon, but they're losing focus. And this is where, you know, pulling back and having that bird's eye view, like I was talking about at the start, and being able to step back helps you find the story that might interest the world again. And because you can't just keep giving them noise. Because even when I was outside, oh my God, the noise coming out of Lebanon, I was like, you know, my dad's watching, you know, the TV stations, and it's all the same thing. And it's, you know,
yeah,
that's the problem with it. But, you know, I remember that video, Kate Blanchett, the Australian actress, Nadine Labaki, I think, wrote the script for that video that they made straight after the blast, and I loved it. And I commend them and commend Kate Blanchett for doing that, generously giving her time without, you know, payment. It was just, you know, she felt the call and did it for the Lebanese. Everyone loves Lebanese. Everywhere in the world, we are loved, but everyone freaking feels sorry for us. And I'm just sick and tired of that too. Like, you know, I went to France last year, went to Paris, went to the Cannes Film Festival, and go to Paris, and the Parisians are, Beirut, you know, the tears of what it was and what it is. And so this is a point of where we've got to step up ourselves. They're waiting for us. They want to see us change. And we had a bit of change last year with the election. We got some independent MPs and change MPs in, and it began, but it's slow. But we need to drive forward. And I know the people are exhausted and they're being battered at every level. The government is just hammering them with these economic difficulties, the crisis, the jobs, the salaries, inflation, the lira, the food, the bread, the petrol. It's no end. There's no end to the calamities that they have to think about on a daily basis once they get up in the morning, you know?
Yeah. You know, I understand the desire to drive for change, obviously. But my general sense is, even going back to October 2019, was that I felt like I never felt like there was a communal understanding that this is a marathon and not a sprint, and that we're undoing not a few years worth of damage, we're undoing multiple decades that go beyond 1975. And really like undoing the structural problems that have to do with the formation, the creation of the entire republic. Yeah. And that the idea of that, like, one election cycle, we're all of a sudden going to have an independent parliament, seemed ludicrous.
Absolutely.
When you speak to, you know, like when you speak to MPs and you're in all these WhatsApp groups, do you feel like there is an understanding of the long game, and that saying, guys, we're doing this for our grandkids, we're not doing this for next spring, and this is going to take a long time. We're birthing a baby, and this baby needs to for it to be an adult, it needs to go through 20 years. I mean, it's going to take a lot of nurturing to get there. Is there an understanding that this is a long game, or is it just like, unless we get 2 years, get this in 2 years, we're out?
You know, I know that there is a desperation. They're desperate. They keep saying we can't last another 4 years, even to the next election, so there's a desperation that there's some people at the lowest level of, the economy and social status are very much under extreme hardship. So they don't know how they're going to survive and they can't put up with it. But so they're looking for some signs. Give us kaharaba at least. Really what they ask for is, do you think we'll have kaharaba in the next 6 months? This is a few months after the election. They said, absolutely not. There's just nothing. There's no discussion. There's no plan. If you're going to have kaharaba, you would have been hearing about it. But these people have no plan for the country. So please think about that. To your question, there are obviously levels of groups in society and intelligence and externally and internally among the Lebanese that understand it's a long game. But the long game, again, isn't just going to happen by itself. And this is what I'm, trying to say with a lot of people. I'm working with diaspora groups and I'm working with people here on the ground, and it doesn't happen by itself. You don't have an idea, and just because you have an idea and a dream, it's going to happen one day. This takes substantial amount of planning, consideration, testing, consistency, and never giving up. That's the only way we're going to get the Lebanon we deserve and want and real change. And you need to start planning. And you just look at countries in the past, historically, America, Britain, the revolutions across different countries, they endured, some of them 100 years for real change. I'm not saying it's going to take that long, and people are saying, oh, yeah, but we're Lebanese and this is a small country and we can do it. And, you're right. This took decades to build this fabric, this web of corruption, and it's deeply ingrained. And unfortunately, people have become used to it because they're surviving. It's not that the culture is we're all bad and, they're all crooks and everything. They're doing what they can to survive, right? That's what they have to be to survive. But what to that point, what gives me great hope and faith is, they're good people at their nature. When you do these psychometric studies, when you're trying to employ people, you do
strength finders,
and you want to know what their character's like under pressure and what their normal modus operandi is. And our normal modus operandi, our normal state is to be happy, have a lot of faith, trust each other, work hard most of the time. We do like to enjoy life a lot, but they still get stuff done, but they respect life and love life. And that's one of the best things about Lebanese culture. So that gives me, when I think about it in that way, there is good basis, good foundations, but they've been abused, ignored, allowed to atrophy because of the system. But if you go back to the asl, as they say, there's a lot of good opportunity and possibility and potential. But potential, as we all know with sports, they're great sports stars, but if they're lazy and don't do the work, they don't get the gold medals. They don't win the. So we need to do that. So the marathon is so important to really get into the narrative and the vernacular but what I feel is still missing is a vision. There's no vision. So there's nothing people can rally behind. And there's no one person or group of people. And we thought the change group would bring it together. That they're standing for change, and I respect them all, and they are the ones really standing against the old system. But there's no vision. You need a vision, like a company. vision, mission, purpose, this stuff, you need to have it. And this is, where this is my work. This is, I gave him a vision in the film and in us, my vision is, for us to have a free and fair Lebanon, elect people who, will represent those values and stuff. But then you've got to extrapolate and define it and make it meaty and real. What does that mean? Yeah. And this is the missing piece right now. But there's a lot of people with a lot of willingness to work on it. And I'm working with the diaspora, a lot of groups in the diaspora, a lot of people in the diaspora. And we get it. We get that we need to come in, Yanni, as well, get together, and we need to unite, and we need to have a vision and a plan and a roadmap of how we're going to help our, brothers and sisters in Lebanon. And now that I'm here, I can give a lot more tangible, information and validation and ideas. And so we are thinking long term, but we need 2026 is really critical, Mikey. It's really critical that another big shift happens, a much bigger shift than 2022, because we need to have a bit of a leap and then another leap, and that's what's important. And I always quote Martin Luther King Jr., and he said that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice.
Yeah. And
people just usually cut that quote off there. But I like to finish it. And it says, as long as we remain steadfast to its completion.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If you are sitting in this hope, the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice and eventually we'll get justice. No, he didn't say that, just that. He said, as long as you remain steadfast to its completion, you got to finish the job. We've got to finish the job and we've got to do it right.
Yeah. And it's an arc. It's not a turn.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not a shift. It's not a pick. It's an arc. Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the role that the diaspora plays, because there's this idea, right? So for people listening to this podcast who are not Lebanese and don't have a deep familiarity with the state of the diaspora, there are many estimates of the number of people who describe themselves as being Lebanese abroad, and it ranges from usually like 9-1 to 12-1 of folks who say that they're Lebanese in some capacity and are living from Brazil to Australia, from Africa to Europe, from Asia to North America, all over the place. So, and there's this utopic vision among people like me who are here, who think, the diaspora are going to come in on their horse and they themselves have all these progressive ideas and are perfect, and they are perfectly suited with all their familiarity with good governance, that they themselves will come in and transform Lebanon into this Singaporic little small bubble. Utopia. But what was interesting is that in 2022, there were all these videos of Lebanese diaspora in places like Germany or whatever, who were standing firm with their sectarian ties. And it blew my mind. So since you're familiar with this, somewhat familiar with this group, obviously you don't know every single little diasporic bubble all over the world, but do you feel like this is a community that has incentives aligned with the folks who are here on the ground who are fighting for change, or are the problems that started here ported to different places like Australia?
The problems definitely are imported in foreign countries, but I watched it all, and I've been in contact with a lot of diaspora groups, and I went to the diaspora for my film. I spoke to diaspora all over the world to try and understand their perspective, because they play a critical role. If it wasn't for the diaspora, Lebanon would have been annihilated 20 years ago, even, you know, they contribute 40% to GDP of this country. You know, I think it's $8 billion a year. It comes from the diaspora. Without the diaspora, we're gone, you know, see ya. But so the thing is, this is this art, this feeling, this connection, this, you know, responsibility and love for their family and the country. But to your point about the numbers, yes, the numbers range significantly. And what I was looking at, because we were analysing it for the film, and we were travelling with the film around the world to different festivals, and learning more about the groups and where they are, and the, you know, concentrations of Lebanese in different countries. You know, you do have pockets in, you know, most countries of the sectarian groups. And because they are the ones, you know, it wasn't until 2019 we all were part of a party. It was only a few years ago we all belonged or believed in, well, I stopped a few years before that, but it wasn't that long ago that the awakening happened, and the awakening, thank God, happened here. And we also, those parts of the communities, the diaspora communities, woke up too. And they're not the majority, but they're the most active. So you talk about maybe 1 million Lebanese around the world who are actively involved in the Lebanese communities in any of those countries. It's not maximum. Now you talk about numbers of about, you know, anywhere from 12 to 16 million. Some people want to make it even higher around the world. And they're the people that resonate or identify with being Lebanese. So they're the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation Lebanese. And they're the ones that my film really pulled in, because it was in English and it was a story they could relate to, and it really opened their eyes, and it came in a story that they could comprehend. They're the audience we need. They're the audience. They're the people that have had the distance, have grown up differently, but still have a connection. And they're the mighty, you know, game changer. They're the silent, you know, sleeping giant. So, you know, they are an audience that we need to continue to tap in, and they've come on board, and they've looked after August 4, they started looking for, how do I get involved with the Lebanese community? How do I help Lebanon? So you had a lot more of an influx in interest and people involved in the situation in Lebanon. So we need to know how to communicate with that audience. And it's great that you've got this podcast, because I'm sure you have probably picked up in the number of subscribers after the August 4 and revolution, because that's when the spikes started to happen and people started to wake up. This massive group of people can't ride in on their white horses and save the country. But they have a wealth of knowledge and experience, and, you know, and if used effectively, really can support the change movement in Lebanon. But they need to get organised as to how, and they need to work together. Not like this is the thing that was happening for me when I was travelling with the film and speaking to politicians around the world. And which Lebanon do you represent? You know, when people come to us, it's, you know, the Maronites or the Orthodox or the Sunnis or the Shias or the Druze or the whatever. That's like, and then different organisation representing, I speak for the Lebanese community. Like, there's so many organisations, and they're tired of that. They're tired of that too. Like, the media's tired of Lebanon's story. The politicians and global leaders and humanitarians and all that, they're tired of that. Like, they're just done. We need to grow up. We need to get professional. We need to get organised. We need to get together as an external diaspora under one umbrella. We don't have to, you know, lose our individual identities, or like, you know, we're still who we are, but we need to speak with one voice. We need to have a collective, you know, narrative, a clear narrative, and we need to be consistent and have a campaign, have a strategy, not, oh, this happened, let's go. Ooh, you know, we all just jump up, and then dies down. There's no consideration for a campaign. We need to plan for what we want, the end game. We need to look at the end game. The end game, be part of a milestone in the end game is the 2026 elections, but that's not the end, you know. That's part of getting to where we really want. And that's where the vision comes in.
Yeah.
And that's why you have like Saudi Arabia Vision 2030. You know, they've got a vision for 2030 in Saudi Arabia. Apparently, Gibran Bassil announced a vision for Lebanon for 2050. And people are going, oh my God, 2050, like, you know,
Yeah.
we can't survive. But so the diaspora has an incredible role to play and need to be far more taken far more seriously. Now, I heard on the ground here from different people around since being here now, you know, the diaspora shouldn't be coming and telling us what to do. You know, they don't live here, they haven't, whatever. But, you know, on the flip side, they want the money of the diaspora, but they don't want any advice. Well, you know, hang on, we've let you go for 40 years and this is where we got to. You got us to here, but you still want our money, but you don't want to listen to our advice. Like, come on, fool me 1,000 times. I'm not going to be fooled anymore. We've got to really draw the line. This is the conditions, no different to the IMF, you know, all of them saying, hang on, guys, you've fooled us for a long time. We want real reforms. This is the plan. You don't want to comply, you're not getting our money. And I'm not saying the Lebanese diaspora should blackmail them because you still need to help them humanitarianly. But for political strategy, political campaigns, the next election, which started on, you know, 16th of May 2022, the campaign for 2026 started, we need to be actively really moving much faster than we are in the diaspora to get organised and have our strategy. And we are, and there's a group of organisations and people that are working, but we need to move faster.
So let me ask you about that, because as you're talking, I have all these. First of all, I feel like that's a good first draft of your campaign speech, just to put that to put that out there. But
they keep saying to me, you know, you should run, you should be an MP. And going, listen.
No, I don't think you should be an MP. I'll tell you what I think you should be. Okay.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I think you should be. Not an MP. There is no single organization that organizes the diaspora across nations, right?
No.
There's no global organization because most of these people, when they left, maybe not vast majority, but a huge minority of people who left what is now called Lebanon, left a place that was called Syria once upon a time, right? My great-grandparents on my mom's side left what is modern day Lebanon, went to the US and
had Syrian passports, yeah.
When they were asked what they were at the time, they said Syrian. And only later in the 60s, they're like, oh, I guess we're not, right? So, and these people went all over the world, right? So there is no institution, there is no single organization that tries to create a constituency and sort of cobble together these million people that you're talking about who are super active and say, okay, wait, what is our vision? Forget what is the vision that comes from the people who are running the organization, because there really isn't no us versus them. There is no diaspora versus non-diaspora. Every single person, from the taxi driver to the MP themselves, are trying to become part of the diaspora. Everyone is trying to become part of the diaspora, and most likely either they or their cousins or their brothers or sisters or children will become part of the diaspora. That is the truth of this place. That has never not been the truth of this place, right? That is our entire business model. That's always been our business model. So I wonder if there's some way to create a governing body for that huge group of people. And then almost, I would imagine that now that I'm thinking about it out loud, it's like, that organization should have a development bank, basically, the Lebanese Diaspora Development Bank, right? And like this should be coordinated, and there should be a clear number of core values. And that's what I think you should do, not an MP.
I hear you loud and clear. And yeah, my point to my answer to them when they said, I said, there's no value in me, really. I mean, I can help a community, but I have I can be far more effective if I'm for everyone. And I want to be for all Lebanese. And this is the platform that I have, is to speak for everyone and try and maintain that impartiality, as long as people are working ethically, and raise the voice or arguments for Lebanon internally and globally. And to your question about doing what you just said is, you're 1,000% right. And this is really the conversation that's we've been having for a year and a half now, to coordinate a governing body, not necessarily, it's a convening. We're trying to work out a term. It's like a coalition, or body that brings in all of these diaspora groups and perspectives. And we are, God willing, the plan is to, we've outlined what the objectives we have and the vision, defining the vision. We all need to come together in a workshop in about a month and a half. So, it is happening. And what is our vision? Not just my vision, it's everyone's. Let's take those aspects of, your description of a vision, and your dream for this country, and challenge it and define and shape it, and come together and do this together, because this is what we want for Lebanon. We want Lebanon to be whole, not to be divided. We can't just be for one sect or two sects. It's for all, and this is the beauty of Lebanon. So, I'm definitely, already working in that direction and trying to help, again, because I'm not part of a diaspora group. I come with some neutrality, and I love and respect them all, and I stand my position there because I am, humbly asked a lot to join a group, and I say, look, I love you and I love what you're doing, but I can't, I should just stay for everyone, because I don't want others to think I'm against them. And there are ties and this challenge, competitive.
But this is our problem. Specifically, this is our problem. This is precisely our problem, because we don't have there's this everything is a party of one, right?
It's not really, though, because these groups are made up of hundreds of people, so they're working together, but they've decided to do it their way, and these people have decided to do it their way, and they should maintain their individuality. And there's a diversity, and like Australia actually is a wonderful example of productive diversity and effective diversity. And here it's all about your faith, your religion. There it's about ethnicity. So, and religion doesn't, play that role that religion does here. But you extrapolate or look at broader, it's a diversity of opinion, and democracies are like that, and you look at America and the minorities and and I look at charities, it's not just about being Lebanese and we have this ego thing and we all want to be a leader and blah, blah, blah. It's a human characteristic. It really is. We all want to say it's Lebanese. It's a human thing. And so those people need to be dealt with cautiously or challenged. And so you don't elect the person who's got an ego. You don't bring that into your value system. You have a structure which doesn't allow egos. It allows values to control you and guide your mission.
Yeah.
And this is the basis where you start from. And many more people will be attracted to that, because there's a lot of good people out there, a lot of good people who want to work for Lebanon and have sacrificed and volunteered, and and everyone deserves recognition. And because they are working, but it's just, this is why right now in the formative stages of trying to bring this global coalition together, we have to be very sensitive and understanding. We have to really put ourselves in the other person's shoes and hear what they are saying, feel where they're coming from, so we can attend to those fears. It's all fear. It's all fear, nothing else. Ego is about fear,
Yeah.
Ego is a significance, needing significance, When you grow beyond that, when you evolve, I've done a lot of work on myself.
Yeah, sure. I'll take the free therapy. Go for it.
It was fascinating understanding, when they define it, there are 6 stages in a human development. And the first one is, belonging, or, what do you call it? Certainty. Certainty is all about security and all that kind of stuff, the fundamentals, having certainty and security. The second stage is uncertainty, wanting then to grow a bit bigger and have a bit of adventure. The third level, where you're expanding and growing into your true spirituality, is love, needing love and connection. The fourth level, when you feel you've got that, so you're building the layers that you're building. The fourth level is significance, where the ego comes in. You've done all this and you want to be doing something to give you significance. And then after that, at levels 5 and 6 is where the real expansion comes. You go into the level of growth, where you're learning, you're wanting to understand, you go into this where you're content, you know who you are, you're comfortable with who you are. You go into a level of growth and opening your eyes to the world, to people, listening, patience comes in. And the final level is contribution. That's when, you're a guru, you're, Dalai Lama, and you're in a place where you're giving. It's not about you. You're in a place of, well, how do I give back? How do I contribute? How do I bring peace, patience, and that into humanity? And every human being goes through those phases, and people are at different phases in this life. If you believe in reincarnation, every life you come into, you're trying to grow to that other level, So I don't know how we got into that topic.
That's all right.
But, in the Diaspora, organization and this group that we're trying to create, you need to have so much patience, because you have to come from a place of understanding, because these people are all really trying to do good. They really are. So you have to validate them. And if you validate them, you do everything, and they're still ego-driven, then you know that they're not part of this group. And you say, Allah يكون معكم بيركم, بس نحنا we're walking this way, and this is our values, and we all have to abide by them, and we all are made accountable to those values. And that's when you set really strong foundations and values. It makes it really easy to make decisions and see who is really part of you and who isn't.
Yeah.
And there's no need for anger or violence or swearing or anything. It's just, hey, it's not working. And I learned that so profoundly when I was doing Tony Robbins. You know Tony Robbins?
Yeah.
American. I love him to death. Like, I grew so much. Just it made so much sense, when I'm trying to grow my business and frustrated with stuff and not doing this and and he was so peaceful about it. It's like, it's a value chain of business, just like a country, just like a home, and everyone's got a role to play in that value chain. And when you sit down with that person, you say, you should describe the value chain, and we've got 10 people here, Max and Joe and Blob and Mary and whatever, and you're sitting here, and when you don't do your work, it blocks the chain. We can't work. Everyone gets affected. And so, do you think you can do your job? Like, what's hell holding you up? How do we help you? Whatever. And if you go through that process and it doesn't work, it's like, hey, maybe this just isn't for you, and that's okay. And maybe you need to go play with some other people, because we need to do this here. And you let them go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about corruption? Part of the frustration.
Just light up another cigarette right now.
Yeah, please do. So part of the frustration with folks who want to invest in Lebanon is that there's this image, justly or unjustly, that no matter how much sand you put in somebody's hand, it just leaks, right? Everything just leaks. And to the point where there's a common recurring joke on the internet that even criticized, not even the government, that criticized the nonprofit sector in Lebanon, the people who are trying to advertise themselves and position themselves as being an independent sector, fixing the endemic systemic problems that face ordinary individuals. Without fail, every single organization that gets some huge grant or some huge investment from abroad, never from locally, always gets criticized, justly or unjustly, that there's corruption and that the people who are the constituencies that are intended to benefit from these investments are only getting a small share, and the lion's share are going to folks at the top through kickbacks or through things like that. And, through your reporting and your work and your research and your efforts, do you have any good ideas on how to either fix the image or fix the truth?
Look, all of it's true, and then, but it doesn't apply to everyone, because there are a lot of very good NGOs in Lebanon. But, the fact is that there are more NGOs in Lebanon than, GDP per capita than any other country in the world, which really is a problem, and really where all this questioning comes in, and doubt, and there is a hell of a lot of corruption and a lot of waste of money, and people, siphoning off funds that should have gone to the needy. But again, I say, having lived in Australia, in America, in the UK, it's everywhere. There are charities everywhere. They're not only in Australia, in Lebanon, where, you've got these things going, and they, in Australia, and I'm sure in other countries, they have to declare how much money actually goes to the beneficiaries. And you see in some charities, 70% goes to admin, 30% goes to the needy, and, and they get away with it because they're being transparent. They're allowed to keep going. The people sending the money should be questioning and looking into who they're giving their money to, the people who are donating. So I ask people to be more curious and do your due diligence. I mean, I donate to a lot of charities, and they're very specific around the world and in Lebanon, but I've done my due diligence. I make sure the majority goes to the people that need it. You can't, again, it's the same thing as we were talking about earlier. We don't have a country or a government or institutions that investigate or interrogate corruption in Lebanon. They don't want them. In Australia, we have the Anti-Corruption Commission. In America, you've got multiple investigations and, institutions, and they still get away with it, but it's really minimal compared to the level in Lebanon. They've destroyed those institutions intentionally, and they've rewritten legislation here to allow them to be owners of banks. This, conflict of interest is rife throughout the country, and they've set up their own NGOs, and they put people in the front men in the front to, find money and get money and all this stuff. So it's a reality, but but there are good charities here that are doing outstanding work, and people should just do their proper due diligence to find out if they want to serve and help Lebanon, or find families or find people directly to help, Oh my God, there's so many ways that we could set things up. And I got a lot of people saying, we want to, from outside, who want to help Lebanon, and I just don't have enough time and hours in the day to be able to help facilitate and work with them on it. There's tremendous ideas, but, I am setting up my own foundation here, and it's not to do handouts, but it's been stalled a little bit because I've got so much on, but I've been working, I didn't do it just for the sake of it. I'm not doing it for the sake of it. And it was after investigating a lot of what charities do here, And I said, we've got to shift away from handouts and keeping people with their head bowed and dependent. And how do we do that? 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 How do we give them independence? How do we give them self-sustaining, lives? How do we empower them? And after, quite a few months and traveling and talking and thinking about it, I remembered this story from when I was a journalist in, the 80s and 90s. Some big institutions around the world wanted to help people in Africa and India and the extreme poverty, the people the most needy. And I remember this program, it was a microfinancing loans that they started. And this story of this woman who was a dressmaker in this very impoverished village in the middle of nowhere in India. And she had a skill. She was a dressmaker, but she didn't have a sewing machine. She didn't have material. She didn't have cotton. She didn't have anything, but she could. And so they gave her a $3,000 loan over 3 years. And that woman ended up, over 3 years, eventually employing her family, her extended family, her village, and the community. And like 3 years later, she'd empowered and she was empowered and they were, repaid her loan and she got it back on her feet. And I thought, that's the way we've got to do it. We've got to give them back the opportunity to be self-sustaining and not be desperate for that bribe when the election comes because they need money to eat. And so this is the idea, and we're working on it. We're trying to get there, but I just got to get a few things done. But I think, raise money from abroad and directly aim it to, and there's a lot of, we've expanded the concept to be far more transparent, to comply with universal standards, to give people visibility, ongoing visibility, engagement, because that's what I do. When charities I support, I get that visibility, I get the stories, I get the feedback, I get the accountability, and it gives me confidence to continue to support them. And that's what we need, especially from people, if they're donating from abroad, they're used to that system. They want that system. Yeah. Amazing.
Okay. Before we get to the quick Q&A, I'd be remiss not to ask you, how can people see your film, Enough, Lebanon's Darkest Hour?
Okay, so at the moment it's up on Shahid Premium in Arabic. So the Arabic version is available to anyone who has that subscription. It is, I think, available on Apple iTunes, and I think maybe Amazon. One of my other distributors has put it up there. It's not broadly, they are talking about it now, that they want to put it up on all streaming platforms, and one of the distributors in the US wants to do that. So that might go ahead, but so it'll be coming soon. It's just we haven't sort of pushed it out really, because I'm also in the process of updating it. So there's going to be a new version of it because I want to incorporate the results of the election and the impact. And I think it's a really important ending now, because we've had the election, for the diaspora and audiences around the world to see what happened, because the film was all leading up to vote, vote, vote. So what happened? Big reveal. And there's a lot of good news to be telling in that. When you look at the stats alone, it's fantastic. So, and it really is, important to close off the story, because we are leading into the next election in 2026. So
can the new version be called Now It's Really Enough?
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. Okay, let's do the quick Q&A. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's do this rapid fire Q&A and then we will wrap up. So what are you reading or watching these days?
Okay. Oh my God, so much. A lot of it's to do with Lebanon content, because I just need to be immersed in what's going on to be able to, find the story that's really going to impact people and keep talking about Lebanon. But I haven't, I've got books that I read, and I brought some over. Actually, they're being shipped over from Australia. I've got a whole library. I love to read books. I watch a lot of series. I watched the Designated Survivor. It's about America and the Washington, the White House president. I like those sort of shows because they give you more insight into the world and how international politics and works. I love goofy shows. I watched Al Haba, the whole series, and
Nice.
I absolutely loved it. I loved learning more deeply about the culture. I actually, I love Jabal Sheikh Jabal, if he's watching, listening. The character, the values that he represented to me is Lebanon. That's my people. That's who we are.
Cool.
I watch a lot of stuff, Ted Lasso, that kind of stuff.
Nice. Okay, great. Who would you love to shadow for a day, past or present?
Wow. I had this dream, and one of my dreams was to shadow Steven Spielberg, because I just think he's an extraordinary storyteller and filmmaker, and the diversity of stories he's brought to the world has really shaped us. But he's one, and I would have died almost to have shadowed Nelson Mandela. To me, what an incredible character. You talk about the level of evolution. That man evolved in his own lifetime, and I would have loved to sit with him for a day, and it's such an incredible source of wisdom and power. And I learned a lot from him. Reading his story, following his stories is everything. Yeah
Talk about a moral arc.
See, and he's 27 years in solitary confinement on Robie Island, never gave up, and he chipped away at it until he got the chance to sit with de Klerk, and he convinced him. It took him 2 years to convince the president of South Africa to abandon apartheid. I mean, how more peaceful a way to transition than that? Yeah.
What do you think people most misunderstand about your work?
Okay. That it's about me. They think it's about me. They think I'm doing it to become famous and whatever. And they're the people who think I'm on an ego trip, and I'm so not. I just no one else is doing it, and I've got a lot of skill and experience, and I know what people want to watch video. They'd rather watch than read. I could write articles, but people consume video, so you've got to be out there reporting it and telling it in a way that they will consume it. So, and I absolutely believe in this country so much and the people, and I've spent an absolute fortune. I'm burning away my kids' inheritance. I'm paying for all of this to be here and have people here, and I could be sitting on a Greek island, writing my next novel or movie. It's not
Daisy,
easy.
you should reassess your priorities. I will give you the free therapy.
No, I'm in a level of my life, really, when I'm at that place of growth and contribution where there is nothing more that I would want to be doing. It's nothing. I have great peace. I'm not conflicted about the decision. I am at great peace. And if I died tomorrow, I would be at peace with my decision, because I'm doing what God's asked me to do. Yeah.
Amazing. And then the last question is, outside of your field, so unrelated to Lebanon, unrelated to the stuff that we talked about, who do you admire? Like, who gives you inspiration?
Oh my God, so many people. Like, look at Greta Thunberg, this young teenager who decided to speak up for the environment, and she's been trolled and whatever and trashed, and she's defiant because she has clear conviction of what she's doing. I'm gonna fail to give you names right now, but I'm inspired by so many people, and even last year, the 100 Successful Women in Business conference, and, you know, we're in London. I met extraordinary women from around the world who they're not famous, but they're doing amazing things for their communities and their countries and in their own way. You know, I find inspiration, you know, in the people here in Lebanon, the courage that they continue to demonstrate and believe and to go on and maintain their humility and kindness. I've got friends who inspire me. My mother was my greatest inspiration, God rest her soul. And my dad, who's still alive, he taught us discipline, and he had this real conviction of he had this philosophical mind. Mum was a real doer. She came from a very good, well-to-do family. He came from abject poverty, two worlds. But they brought great characteristics into us as children and taught us real values.
Amazing. Well, Daisy, listen, this has been so much fun talking to you. If anyone's interested in finding your stuff online and they're listening to this podcast, you can find Daisy on social media at DAIZYGEDEON on everything. And Daisy, thank you so much. This was fun.
I had a ball. Thank you. It was really an exploration for me too. I loved it. Thank you, Mikey.
Thanks so much.